So welcome everybody to our Sunshine Coast Ocean Festival NEMO Talk series. We're excited to have with us today Carl Olsen. My name is Suzanne Sanger. I'm the Executive Director of the Sunshine Coast Conservation Association, and I'm joining our meeting today from Chiquelp, Gibsons, and at Catsum House Sound in the territory of the Squamish Nation. The SCCA is just so thrilled to be partnering on our Ocean Festival this year with Rhizome Up Media, Rogue Fest, and the Sunshine Coast Arts Council. This year's events have been made possible with funding from the District of Sechelt, Sunshine Coast Regional District, Sunshine Coast Credit Union, BC Government, and the Canadian Ocean Literacy Coalition, as well as many donors and supporters. We're very grateful to everyone for all their support for this program. SCCA is a charitable nonprofit society, and our mission is to protect and restore biodiversity on the Sunshine Coast. Our area of interest is over 2 million hectares from Howe Sound to Hamathko in the territories of the Squamish, the Sheshath, Tliamin, Cluhus, and Homolko First Nations. The SCCA is, acknowledges and recognizes rights and title of all nations in their territories. And we also are just really deeply grateful to the First Nations of these areas who have stewarded the lands and the waters and maintained, that connection between all things in these territories since time immemorial. We take great inspiration from that connection, as well as the reverence and the respect that Indigenous peoples have always had with the lands and the waters and the species. It's in this spirit of connection between all life on this beautiful planet and in this place that we bring our Oceans Festival to the public. The Oceans Festival is also inspired by the United Nations World Oceans Day. In 1992, the UN designated June 8th as World Oceans Day to raise awareness in the global public of the impact of human actions on our oceans, in order to develop and mobilize a worldwide movement of citizens for the ocean. So every year on June 8th, people all around the world come together to celebrate our oceans. And increasingly, as the issues facing the marine ecosystems and us grow, awareness, advocacy, connections, and celebrations like this are also important and growing. Our 2024 program includes in-person and online screenings of some beautifully inspiring feature and short films and resources, interactive citizen science and education activities, and of course, our NEMO talks, all of which are intended to inspire, enlist, and connect people to take action to protect and restore our oceans. Today, we are just so pleased to have with us Carl Olsen for our fourth talk in our 2024 NEMO series. Carl is an Indigenous knowledge holder from the wh-say-nech First Nation. Carl has been a vital part of clam garden restoration projects in the Salish Sea for many years. He has spent countless hours advocating for the protection and restoration of harvesting sites in his territory. And he's committed to rebuilding, harvesting, and educating people with the knowledge he carries from his ancestors. In today's talk, Carl will share with us about the historical significance of clam gardens as a food source, how they are cultivated, and share some examples of past and present clam garden restoration projects that he's working on. Carl, thank you so much for joining us today. We're gonna ask Sophia to share the screen for your presentation, and you can get going.
Well, thank you very much for the invite. First of all, I'll let you know that my English name is Carl Olsen. My given name here comes from my mother's side of the family, my grandfather. Sewisut is how you pronounce it. I'm from the wh-say-nech community of Sartlup, and there's 5 different communities that are here under the Indian Act, which is Sartlup is one, Paquachin is another one, Sycam is another one, Malahat is another one, and Sayout is the other one. So there's right here on the very tip of just north of Victoria are the wh-say-nech bands. We are known as the saltwater people, and the reason for that is because our way of travel was by canoe when we traveled the islands to these the southern Gulf Islands to where we harvested, actually. And the food base that you will see through the slides you'll be amazed at the amount of food base there is within these rock walls. I'll let you know that the southern Gulf Islands that we have been working in are Salt Spring Island, Main Island, Pender Island, Russell Island, Pender Island, Saturna, Cabbage Island, James Island, Sydney Island, and Russell Island is a smaller island, but those are all like the southern Gulf Islands that actually have the clam garden walls on them. Now it's a piece of little history from why we're just now starting to rebuild. It's been 10 to 12 years that we've been working on and recovering the clam garden walls. And you'll see some pictures of them. In 1927, we were banned from harvesting of clams or the medicines that we harvested from these islands as well, through a law that was put out by the provincial government, I guess, at the time, or federal government, around the food base that we had. And if you look to see just how big of a food base that these clam garden walls have in them, you'll see that the food base would cover a lot of people that traveled throughout the southern Gulf Islands. And just recently, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, on Quadra Island, they realized that there's 27 clam garden walls around Quadra Island. And so the technology that our ancestors had around a food base was large. And when you follow the history of our ancestors, you'll see that you wonder how they figured these things out, like the clam gardens. And the other part of our history was the reef net fishing. So the southern Gulf Islands are here, and on the southern part of Vancouver Island. But you'll probably start to hear that many of the islands, like the island that I just mentioned, now I forgot it already, but it has like 27, Quadra Island has 27 known rock walls on it as well. And so that technology has been around for a while. If you want to just switch to the next slide, I can. I guess the question that I would ask, and I'll ask you to think about it while I go through the presentation here, is what do you know about clam gardens? What do you know and why they were built? And so that's a question that maybe we can get to near the end of the presentation. We go to the next slide. Thank you. Now you see just here, this young lady is from Penalaket. She was at the very start of working with Parks Canada around the clam garden walls. And you can see just behind her there, just as the tide's going out, the rock wall starting to appear behind her. This is on Russell Island, just off of Salt Spring Island. And there's 4 rock walls that appear on Russell Island. And there's a strong connection to First Nations on that island. There's a small write-up on that Parks has really been willing to share and learn as they go along from the elders in the communities here. Not just the wh-say-nech communities, but also the Cowichan and the Hulkaminam speaking communities here on the Southern Island. Okay. Now, as you see here, this is we have some very old pictures of the beaches that from the Saanich archives in the Port Angeles, Washington. You think, well, why are we looking there? Well, because if you take a look at where the wh-say-nech people live, you can look out from Sydney and see the San Juan Islands, which is the American side of the border, which is very close. And the wh-say-nech people are a part of the Lummi community, which is in Bellingham, Washington. So a lot of my family are there. So when I was talking earlier, I was talking about how we are the saltwater people. We travel by canoe down into Lummi and to visit our families, all by canoe back then. So next slide. Now these are some of the clams that you can find on on the beaches that we are working on. We're not only working just to turn the clam garden, the beds over to cultivate them, which causes more food for a food base for the clams to actually feed on. And we are now starting to, because some of the rock base has sunk into the mud flats, it makes it harder for clams to be able to survive. So we have been cultivating that and breaking clam shells and adding it to the beach so that it breaks the the mud flats up a little bit to make the clams able to live in those rock walls or on those mud flats. Now you see there's what we call a butter clam. It's the biggest base for the butter clams are just by Long Harbor and Salt Spring Island. There's a rock wall there where it's mostly butter clams that are on that beach. And along as we're doing this work, we're having through parks, they're getting the clams tested so that we can start harvesting them for a food base again. Because they have been left so long, they've died out. Like I was saying earlier, 1927, I think, is when we were banned from working these rock walls. And so they've been sitting for this long now. And just 12 years ago, parks, when they passed that legislation, I guess, that all the southern Gulf Islands would be park reserve. And so that's why we're so heavily involved with Parks Canada. So you see little necks, and then you see the manillas. Manillas are not native clam to here, but they've been introduced to here, and they produce really well. And then you have on the last picture there on that slide is called a cockle, and they're more like a steamer that you would steam them and then eat them. And so it's on Cabbage Island. When we first started working the beaches there on Cabbage Island, none of these beds had many clams still alive in them. And so now the fastest one to recover has been Cabbage Island. And it was like, it must have been just waiting for us to start cultivating and making the ground, turning it over and making the clams happy again. And so the food base there is large, because on Cabbage Island, you got cockles, you got butters, you got little necks, you got manillas, you got the whole works there. And so it's really important that as we're doing this, we're having them tested and making sure that we can get to a point where we can start harvesting those clams as a food base once again. Because in most communities, we already know that a large part of our communities are food insecure. And if we can make these clam gardens work for us again, that takes back a food base that we have lost. You got another slide there. Okay, now I talked a little bit earlier about the clams are not the only food base within these rock walls. You see there an octopus. You have oysters growing on the rocks of the rock walls. and you got sea cucumbers, and you got the scallops here on the end. And it's surprising on Russell Island, if you look into the wall and see the number of scallops that are coming back, rock scallops. It's pretty good. And we keep it kind of like a secret right now because we want to get it to a point where we can start harvesting and feel good about that. We're not going to over harvest. And that's really important. That's a big part of our teaching, is that you take what you need and you leave the beach in better shape than what you arrived. And so that food base is there for all who traveled by canoe back then. I know my grandfather did, and some of my uncles did travel a lot by canoe. And so you look at this amount of food and you think that how did our ancestors figure this out? Because they created a whole food base that we could survive on. And like I was saying, when you take a look at the rock walls on it's on Salt Spring, it's up by Long Harbor. When you look really closely at the walls there, they're built in a way where, remember I was saying earlier, they look like little dens. And that's where the octopus will come in and make its home. And that's how we can harvest them. We have harvested a couple of octopus out of the rock walls on, I'll say Long Harbor. Skikmuch is how we pronounce octopus in our language. Okay, next. This is some of the group of people that come and work on the rock walls. This is on two of these pictures are from Swinomish. We were asked to go down 2 years ago to help the Swinomish community rebuild a rock wall there, and 200 people that worked on the rock wall there, and we rebuilt in one day around 170 yards of rock wall. It was like the amount of work that was being done in the time that we had at low tide. And that's one of these things about these rock walls, is that they all had to be built right at the lowest tide. And so that gave us more beach to look after, and the food base would be bigger. This picture, yeah, it says there it's on Russell Island. These are butter clams. Here you see the beach. It's got a lot of a sand base, clam shell base to it, and it makes it so that it breaks it up and the clams can survive better. Now, when you're at a beach where there's clams and you'll see them squirting up, that's the clams that are, when they squirt like that, they are actually cleaning out their system. Because when they move, the muscles they use to move in the ground, they take in the sand into the body part, and then when the water squirts out, it cleans the sand out. That's what they're doing. So yeah, next picture. Now this is Fulford Harbor. This Fulford Harbor is on Salt Spring Island, and you can see just in the right up there, the rock wall is 800 meters long, and it doesn't look like it's very high there, but it is 3 to 4 feet high, 3 feet high, but it goes out about 15 feet, as you can see. And you can see on the inside of that rock wall just what kind of what it has done for the beach there. And it's made it so that we can work it better. And you see over on the very right side, I can't move the picture over, but you see where we've turned the ground over there. That's just to help the clams actually get a better food base themselves. And they become, the clams, when you're digging just in an open beach, they do have a good, I guess, protein meat, but the clams that you get on the inside of these rock walls are much bigger. They have a better opportunity to survive. They have more seaweed that they can feed on and things like that. But we don't want the seaweed to overtake, so you don't see much seaweed on the beach there. We remove a lot of it in buckets, and we carry up and dump them around the trees in the forest there. And so we help the environment survive a little bit more, but we also help the beach and the clams and things like that. Now, the middle picture is the one that I was telling you about at Long Harbor. You see it's only about 15 yards wide, very narrow, but it's all sand. Lots of clams. And this is the first one that has come back clean. And we've been there to harvest. And the fellows that have been there to harvest will do a harvest, will come home, we'll clean them, we'll chuck them out of the shell, and we deliver them to the people so that they do have a chance to have some of their food that they had as a in their diet earlier on in life. Next picture, please. So those are the actual only pictures that I have, unfortunately, but maybe I can ask, maybe you can back up to that last one. And if there's any questions, maybe this is a good time to ask if there are any questions that you have. Oh, one thing that I want to tell you about the Fulford Harbor rock wall. Working with Parks Canada, they wanted to try and get an age of how old these rock walls could be. And you can't tell by just looking at it. So they removed some of the rocks and took some of the sediment inside the rock or inside the wall and had it tested. The Fulford Harbor wall was tested to be 4,500 years old. And when you take a look at the rock walls around the other islands, you think that they have to be the same, because they look very much the same, built in the same way. Now, when you take a look at Fulford Harbor here, that long wall, you think that's all one wall. Every so often there's a 3-foot break in there, and that just makes it so that when the water's coming back, it'll flood a little faster. And so the technology that our ancestors had, they had a really good understanding of what they needed to do to provide a really strong food base for the thousands of First Nations that lived in the Southern Gulf Islands at that time.
Carl, could I ask a question?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm really curious, so is there, like, are there certain like sizes and shapes of rocks that are used to make the edge of the rock wall? And like, if I were walking along a beach and I saw, a particular sort of structure, would I be able to know that I was, in a archaeological site, like in a clam garden, if it wasn't sort of already discovered that it had been there?
I think it would be fairly easy to see that at low tide, and you have to look more or less at the very low tides. Right now, there's some very low tides that are happening during the daytime, and they're minus tides. So that makes it even easier for us to identify. But mostly it was just the rocks that were there on the beach, the nice round boulders that were stacked in a way that they made the wall, and they had it go out toward the water, because then now if you go and look on the rock wall right there, there's crabs there, there's octopus there, there's we had a school class there a couple of weeks ago, and one of the very young students says, "Did you see all the food in those rock walls?" So he was amazed himself, right? And so you see the home that shellfish, other kinds of food base that would come and make their home there. Now, I talked a little bit earlier about having oysters in your rock walls. And I don't know if you know why I was asking that question, because it's really important to have them there to make sure that your food base was safe. And what I mean by that is that, do you know that oysters are a natural filtration? They clean the beach. They make it safe for the clams to eat. They take out all the toxins, and they clean they naturally clean. They're the natural cleaners of the water. You can put a couple of oysters in a bucket of dirty water that you can't see the bottom, and an hour later you'll be able to see clear water. So
Wow. We've got a couple questions in the chat. I'll read them out one at a time. So Maggie was asking, she's thinking about big storms and the wear and tear on the walls and repair. Could you comment on that, Carl?
Yes. Okay, I said earlier that in 1927, they banned us from being able to work and on these clam garden walls. And so over the years, they have deteriorated quite a bit. Like even the big waves now from the ferries, or you think those rocks, they shouldn't move, but they do. And so the work that we did was to go back and rebuild the walls that needed some help. And that's just putting those rocks back in place. And so that's the kind of work that we're doing, along with turning the beach over itself. I should mention this, on Russell Island, especially, at one of the rock walls, there's a drop off, and there's a big kelp bed right there. And so from some of the elders I talked to about why it was built right on the edge of a drop off, the answer I got was that at low tide, because rock cod would be down in amongst the kelp. And so when the tide went down, the cod would come up over the rock wall onto the beach side. And then when the tide dropped, you would have cod that would be trapped on the inside, and they would harvest that as well. So
it serves this multi-purpose of actually cultivating the area for the clams and everybody to be able to grow more and larger. I've seen evidence of that, like these really huge clams historically, and then also being able to catch the fish and the octopus. And wow, that's amazing.
So yeah, you see what the food base was like, just seeing a rock wall. Yeah. And so yeah, to answer the question, we have some of the rock walls were in pretty bad shape, but you could see that they were there and the rocks were still there. So we just moved the rocks back onto the wall and cleaned up. The beaches now look way better than what they did when we first started again.
Very cool. Carl, we've got another question from Sarama. He says, thank you. I think I may have seen what looks like an old wall at low tide on the shoreline in the harbor here. I'm assuming he means Gibson's Harbor. If I sent you a photo, do you think you might be able to confirm?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
We have been doing that lately. It's amazing that I want to send a thanks out to all these kayakers that are kayaking around the islands, and we get reports back saying, what is this structure? And we've been able to identify them as clam garden walls. And so we've been out to Pender Island and Saturna Island were two islands where we have received reports about clam garden, the walls itself, and we've been out to look at them, and they are clam garden beds. And I think that's what's really important is if we can get the public on side as to report things like that, then it really helps us out to identify, and we're able to let the public know that they are actually clam garden beds. So
Carl, is there uh who should we contact? So if I saw something and I thought I saw saw something that looked like a clam garden, who should I call? Should I send you an email or?
you could send me an email and let me know where it's at. And I don't work for anyone.
Okay.
But they treat me like an elder, and so I'm called on to go out as an elder with Parks Canada,
Okay.
and through the wh-say-nech Leadership Council. They work together, and so I've been called on a number of times, and I just come back from Alaska. That's a sad story. Alaska is a sad story, and so we also need to build relationships with all levels of government so that they can see what our ancestors actually left us.
Yeah. I'm just, do you mind if we put your email address in the chat so folks can take it and contact you if they want to send you something?
Yeah, no, that's great. I think the more we can learn about other beaches, because on Main Island we were just at one 6 months ago, I guess is the last one, in a place called Oyster Bay on Main Island. It really looks like it is a clam garden bed, but it's built in a way where it might also capture some of the fish that are there in that area. So
very cool. I'm fascinated by the fact that you said that the sediments, like the archaeological sampling, showed that these rock walls have been around for upwards of 4,500 years.
yeah,
And when I think about just how active the ocean is and how how much they've been through, it's a pretty astounding feat of engineering, if you ask me, that these walls could be there for so long doing this job.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it is amazing that when when I was, you were just saying that June 8th was some
United Nations World Oceans Day.
World Oceans Day on June 8th. That's actually June 8th is my birthday, so I can celebrate both. So yeah, I've been around for a little while. I may not look like it, but I've been around for the last, in fact, I'm still living in the same house I was born in. So I was born at home 1948. So
and bringing the traditional knowledge of your ancestors through to whole new generations of people. I feel very grateful, Carl, for that. We've got a couple more questions, if you don't mind.
oh, I don't.
Okay. Heather was asking, do you know if there are any clam gardens in the Seashelt Inlet? She sees a lot of clams below her when she's kayaking.
If I would have to say that there would be. I really believe that there would be. Yeah. Because it would be a food base that is so close to the communities there in Seashelt and Slam and
yeah, I've heard I mean, I was saying earlier when we were having a chat before we got into we let everybody in the room that I recently took a course with the Shishaf language and culture course, and we had one day where we were hearing from the archaeological team, and they were talking about clam beds in Calpalin and Pender Harbor that you know, thousands and thousands of years old, and the just the amount of protein that they could grow in these clam gardens could feed, you know, like orders of magnitude more people than we think may have been here originally. So it's pretty amazing that, like what you were saying before, that just the food source is incredible.
Right.
And I think it kind of, no, I will say this for myself, but not for everybody, but as a settler person growing up in a settler colonial culture, I didn't understand until like literally in my 30s or 40s how much Indigenous people cultivated the land. You know, we were sort of taught that Indigenous people, like, you know, extracted because that's the way we think, or culture thinks, but does, but not as, I just really didn't understand this relationship of how like cultivating the foreshore and recognizing all the food sources, what you talked about with the oysters, right? Like filtering the system. Like this is such a, I think this is new information, honestly, Carl, for a lot of us.
Well, so you're right about the seaweed that we remove from the beach and bring up to put around trees and lay out on the land to it's like a giving the land fertilizer. And I really believe that those were, all these rock walls were put where they harvested not only clams, but they harvested medicines. They harvested food in those areas. And when you listen to the teachings that we have, is that we always only would take what you need, and make sure that you look after it. And that's the teaching part of it, is that you don't over harvest. And one of the books that we read is called Braiding Sweetgrass. There's a whole chapter in that book that talks about how you harvest, because you only harvest this much because, you know, when you do that, it comes back stronger. And so that's what you want. You want a base that is always going to be strong. You want to create a balance, not only around the clam garden beds, but where you harvest these medicines and other foods, bulbs that were a food base for us.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Making sure that you cultivate so that more comes back is something I think our society could really use a refresher on.
Yeah.
We have a couple more questions. So Sarama was asking, why is Alaska a sad story? Is it because of the huge oil spill from the Exxon Valdez?
Well, they still haven't gotten that cleaned up yet. So no, the sad part is that we went up there because they do have they did show us a small portion of a clam garden wall. But the sad part of it is that I don't know if you know this about Alaska, is that Alaska was, the Americans were after it and the Russians were after it. And they were sold, Russia sold Alaska to the United States. And in the agreement, they never involved any of the First Nations in Alaska and around Alaska. So Alaska has no, in the States, they're called reservations. In Canada, they're called reserves. So in Alaska, there's no reservations for First Nations. Alaska, the Alaskan First Nations are called corporations. So they don't exist as a people. They exist as a corporation. And that corporation has no rights to harvest food from the beach. They have no rights to hunt and fish as formerly, like we do here. And so that's what's sad. And they have no accesses to any of what they had before. And so that's what's sad. And I think the reason they asked us to go up and ask myself to go up is to talk to them about how we manage our food bases here. And it's all done through with Parks Canada. We have been able to build a relationship where they depend on us to help them. And we've recovered, believe it or not, the campsites are better off because of the work we do on the beach. And so that's what's missing in Alaska. And I think it's the younger people there that are trying to recover their food base as well. So
Carl, that really brought up sort of two questions I've had going around in my head, like the relationship between the Indigenous community and Parks Canada, and the, so with park designations, is there is there any prohibition with a park, like a Class A park designation, for example, for Indigenous people to be able to cultivate food sources, or is that, do we have any hangups on that? Is DRIPA helping? I don't really, because I know people can. Anyway, I'm not totally sure about how the relationship with not doing things in parks works with First Nations.
well, in Haida Gwaii,
Yeah.
Parks Canada and Haida Gwaii are able to work so closely together because they agreed to disagree with each other.
Yeah.
And about who actually owns what. And so they sort of put that in the background. And I really believe that the First Nations in Haida Gwaii said, in order for us to really look after what we have, we can agree to disagree. And Parks Canada, it was unknown to them what these walls were. And so they came to First Nations here and we identified what they were. And now we've been working really close and have a really good relationship with them right now. And I think if we can create relationships, we can get rid of the unknown part about each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's such an important historical archaeological resource as well for for our country and our history. Obviously so important for Indigenous people, but also for all of us to understand that this is a huge amazing legacy of the people of this land. So it's really cool to hear that the relationships are getting stronger and that there's collaboration. One last, we're getting to the end of our time, but something you just touched on before was the younger people. coming forward and getting involved. I'm curious, are the Indigenous communities starting to cultivate enough of these resources, the clams and other foods in these gardens, that it's starting to become once again part of the actual way of life and the diet more, and especially for the younger generations?
Yes, I would say yes. What we have is the tribal school here in our communities make regular visits to the clam garden beds and to see the work that we have been doing, and we put them to work. But also at the same time, we bring a healthy food along with us. So what I mean by that is clean clams, and we steam them there right on the beach, and we make that part of their diet while they're there. And so we've had students say, I don't eat clams. And we say, just try one, just try one. And that works. And the food base has, for those students, has grown. Not because, how do you not know that you don't like something unless you try it? And so I'm involved not only with the clam garden beds, but I'm protesting with Department of Transportation going through our river that supplies salmon every year for us. And so I bring students up there, and I've been, especially through the tribal school, we'll go and harvest, say, 20 salmon out of the stream. We'll bring them back to the school. We'll show them how to clean them, how to prepare them to smoke them. And they do that all at the school. And so the best place for those students to learn is on the land. It's a better classroom right there.
Totally.
And I really feel that that part of it is working, because they're part of the restoration for the beach, but they're also part of the restoration for the plants and the trees, and the environment is better off. But we need people to understand that the responsibility that we have to look after things is on us. And the more we care about something, the more, and it is easier for us to do that, looking after that food base, looking after that environment, and creating a balance with the environment itself. So.
Yeah, wise words. Thank you, Carl. I just before we start to close up, Leanne Johnson has posted a photograph. I'm not sure if we could share the screen, but she says this is one of the octopus islands near Quadra. It sure looks like a clam garden to this settler. I don't know if we could. Is it possible to share a screen? Well, we'll send it to you.
Quadra Island has, I know around Quadra Island, they realize that there's 27 rock walls on around Quadra Island.
Wow. And are these registered archaeological sites once they're discovered?
Some of them could be like traps for fish. That's the other thing too, right? It's not, it wasn't. This is part of the picture that they sent.
Yeah.
Right in this one area, looks like someone was actually starting to try and build a wall there. So But we
Interesting.
have one that's the same out on Main Island. We call it Main Island. And it's more like, I think it was more like a fish, creating a fish pond.
Hmm.
And when the tide goes out, they're there.
Very cool. Yeah, there's just so many things, that we, don't see until you show us. And at the beginning of the talk, Carl, you asked us, what do you know about clam gardens? And I thought, nothing, not much. But now I feel like I know a lot more. And I just really appreciate you coming and sharing and, walking us through this and helping us open our minds and our consciousness to all the amazing things that are out there. And the vastness, like like the Fulford Harbor
The Fulford,
Garden.
yeah,
Yeah, that's huge. It's amazing.
is.
Yeah.
The amount of time and people that it actually taken to build that rock wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the care to maintain it after all those years. It's really amazing. So we have put your contact information into the chat for everybody. Maybe we won't post it up on the website, but if anybody's watched this talk and they're interested to learn more, get in touch with us and we'll share Carl's contact information with you. And yeah, hopefully if you've got any, if you think you've seen a clam garden somewhere, send us a photo. we want to know too. That's a key aspect of the NEMO Talk series, is to try to connect people with projects and help advance and promote conservation and restoration in the area. So that's a big part of why we do this. So yeah, just thanks again, Carl. I'm gonna do some let people know that there's a page on our Sunshine Coast Ocean Festival website that's called the Take Action page. So, if you enjoyed the talks and you want to see where you can slot in to help, make real change, there are lots of resources there to guide you to go and get involved. I just want to say thanks to everybody who came out to the talk today. This is how we make the change in the world. This is how we're going to, shift and protect and restore our marine environments, is all of us taking part and learning and getting involved. If you enjoyed today's NEMO talk, then we hope you'll come tomorrow for our last one in the series. We're going to be hearing from Susan Anthony of the Sea Change Conservation Society, and she's going to talk to us about seafloor garbage in the Salish Sea and how we can help to deal with that. She'll talk about issues that come with underwater debris cleanup and potential and actual solutions for communities around the Salish Sea. We also have so many other aspects of our Ocean Festival program. So we've got an amazing list of short films curated by Billy Carroll and Rhizome Up Media, looking at all the different topics that we've been touching on in this program and over the years. So we hope you'll go to our website and check out some of the films that we've got. On World Oceans Day, on Carl's birthday, we've also got a live event, 2 live events in Seashelf. So we've got our World Oceans Day celebration from noon to 4 at Friendship Park. And then our festival finale is a live film screening of Deep Rising at the Seashelf Arts Center. Doors are at 6:30 for that. All throughout the program, we've had an opportunity to get raffle tickets. We've got some really good prizes, donations from the Ocean Club Cafe, the Seashell Fish Market, Pastime Games, Half Moon Sea Kayaks, and the Vancouver Aquarium. So you can get raffle tickets at the live events on Saturday. And yeah, I think Sophie's posting all the links to all the things in the chat. And if you have any questions about any of the rest of the program, please don't hesitate to get in touch, check out the website. And yeah, circling back, I want to say thank you again to our sponsors, our funders and our amazing Ocean Festival working group and our partners, Billy Carroll and Rise 'em Up Media. Billy's the driving force behind the film aspect of the program. We couldn't do any of that part without Billy. This year we're partnered with Rogue Fest as well for our in-person festival. So that's really fun and a new partnership. And the Seashell Arts Council is also working together with us to help host some of our events. So yeah, we're all in it together. It's a big community. And you really made that point for us across the water too, Carl. So thank you so much again for coming. And yeah, we'll see everybody soon.
Can I just mention one thing that I forgot to mention?
Oh, of course.
If we are at the beach and you're wondering if clams are safe to eat, my elders, my grandparents, my parents would always say, if you see the seagulls and the crows dropping the clams on the rocks and eating them, you know they're safe to eat, because they'll stop eating them when they're not. And so that was one of the things that we would do when we were kids, go watch. Yeah, the birds do drop them on the rocks. They'll bring them up and drop them straight down and break them open. And so
and they won't eat them if they're toxic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. Good advice from your elders and the birds.
That's right.
That's great.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to be able to do this. I really appreciate it. I think it's we all need to know that there's a food base there and a large food base, but we also have to look after it so that it stays with us.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Carl.
Yeah.